outcome from the UN Peace Conference, the 21st century, and a way forward. But before I do that, since we might have different background when it comes to Burma, as usual, I would like to briefly go through how the peace process evolved and in Myanmar. Without further ado, let me get into my presentation. One of the main causes of conflict in Myanmar, Burma, is, as I mentioned here, this is a country formed by 8 different major ethnic groups, but the domination of the levels of power and political institution by one dominant ethnic group against 7 minorities, which resulted in institutional suppression, systemic alienation of ethnic national minorities who are the original, owners of their respective states, who are also the voluntary founders for the Union of Burma. When they lost their birthrights to self-determination and self-government, that's when they took up armed struggle. This is why from 1949 until even today, we have this armed struggle going on. And basically, even though we have the democratic system from 1948 until 1962, as I said, the institution was set up in a way that enable majority group to dominate the governmental powers that ethnic groups feel discriminated and losing all their birthrights to self determination. This is why we have this conflict ongoing. So the point I want to highlight here is, in Myanmar case right now, it is not merely the problem between democracy versus dictatorships. It's more about, how do we ensure that original inhabitants of their respective ethnic states, who are also equal founding members of the union, feel that they have self-rule for their respective states, and also a shared rule in which all 8 major ethnic groups govern the union that they own collectively together. So that's the first point I want to highlight. Here, let's jump into the current peace process and how it started. I think Christian can. Okay, good. As you know, after 2010 general election, the first government led by President Thein Sein came to office with the intention of starting a political dialogue with ethnic armed organizations, basically acknowledging that there is no military solution to the political crisis of Myanmar. This is why he offered a dialogue as a way to resolve political conflict, and ethnic armed organizations responded saying that yes, we want political dialogue. That's how the peace process started, and they end up signing what they call the Nationwide Ceasefire Agreement, as you all know, on October 15, 2015. In that, the Nationwide Ceasefire Agreement, I think you have some of the significant points of Nationwide Ceasefire Agreement is that first, I think there is a commitment to resolving political conflict in Myanmar by federalizing, as well as the democratizations. So this is significant in itself because, the federalism used to be a dirty word, equating itself with secession and all that. But all of the stakeholders, especially the government in Myanmar and military institution, accepting federalism at least is a positive step. But now we are going to see what kind of federal system Myanmar will have. Of course, this is the question that they are trying to address on through their ongoing political dialogue. And in the Nationwide Ceasefire Agreement itself, they have adopted what they call 7-step roadmap already, which is just to go through briefly. First, to sign nationwide ceasefire agreement, which they did already. And second is to adopt framework for political dialogue. This is all about, who should be a part of dialogue, how do we make decision, what topics we discuss. They have done that as well. And the third level is a national level dialogue. They realize that, the having a mechanism at the top where we negotiate is important, but equally important is also about to make sure that we consult with our people, our citizens at the grassroots level to hear their thoughts. This is why they have this national level dialogue where they consult their people. And the fourth one is Union Peace Conference, which is ongoing. And the fifth step is to sign Union Accord. This is important because the ultimate goal of this ongoing political dialogue is to adopt Union Accord, to sign Union Accord, which would comprise of basic federal principle as well as democratic principles, which would be the basis to amend all undemocratic laws, anti-federal arrangement that is in the current union constitution. And the sixth is once they got this union accord to be ratified by the parliament. And the seventh and the last step is to implement all the agreements. So these are the 7-step roadmap. And the one of the good things about peace process right now, at least, is that there is a strong representation from the government, especially the army, and also the ethnic armed organization, even though I have to acknowledge, unfortunately, that there are major ethnic armed organizations still could not join the process. And hopefully, sooner or later, they would be able to find sort of like a negotiated settlement between the government and ethnic armed organizations that have not been a part of the process, hoping that they would join a process of political dialogue. And next, I think we can, okay, good. So in terms of challenges, of course, after 70 years of armed conflict, you can imagine how there is deficit of trust and all these problems that comes with political dialogue. As for now, if I may go through some of the points that I have in terms of challenges, negotiating federal principles. Basically, the fact that they want to end armed conflict by federalizing. Here they are negotiating basic federal principles, basically about which would govern self-rule for federating units, what kind of power we should give to federating units, and also the assure rule aspect of Federation of Myanmar, what kind of power we should give to our common union government, like defense and others. So they are in the process of negotiating these principles. But as they negotiate these principles, of course, challenges is like issue relating to non-secession clause. As you might have heard already, which has been causing almost a deadlock, at least for the last 2 or 3 years. And at least they find their way around, and they are now back to the table to continue the process. And also the security sector reform. Security sector has been a very difficult one. For example, from the government, especially the Damato, the military side, of course, unless ethnic armed organizations agree to secure some kind of like a common agreement between the Damato and them, especially focusing on security sector reintegration, as they call it. They are not open for negotiating with other issues because this is near and dear to them. And if I may put it bluntly, they really they want armed groups to basically disarm as quick as possible. One of the arguments that they make during the formal dialogue, as I remember, is that they think that if ethnic armed organizations negotiate, comes to dialogue, without arms, they thought the process would be quicker because they have held arms in their hand, means this would prolong the process. But it's just, and they want to see, of course, the DDR as quick as possible. On the other hand, ethnic armed groups are clear. Yes, the reason why we took up arms is not that we are fond of killing or shooting, but we want to claim our political birthright of self-determination. We resort to armed struggle as the last resort when our appeal for dialogue was ignored by the central government for many years. So unless they find a political settlement and also develop a clear security sector reform policies, and they would not be open for DDR. So at least I just want to highlight how the two sides see these issues differently, but at least there is agreement that security sector is important, but we are going to move forward through this dialogue and negotiation with the mechanism that both sides can agree. So this is a part of a challenge. And the challenge facing the Myanmar peace process, of course, is about ethnic armed organizations who have not been part of the political dialogue. So this is a major issue in terms of challenges, and the government is also trying to continue negotiating with them. And of course, right now, the active fighting in Rakhine, as you know, even though the military declare unilateral ceasefire covering almost all region, but excluding Rakhine. What do they mean? Is it because they want to go after Argan army? So that's how the Argan army sees, and this is also a challenge. Of course, the COVID-19. If this unfortunate global pandemic doesn't come, they could have even held the last Union Peace Conference before the end of April this year. But once this problem becomes difficult, then the government is focusing on this, coping with this challenge. And let's go to the main intention of this presentation this morning, which is about to share with you the latest update on the Union Peace Conference that was held from August 19 to 21 in Naypyidaw. Of course, as you know, with not only COVID-19 being a problem, but also the negotiation between the government negotiating teams and the ethnic armed organization that signed this ceasefire agreement, the 10 organization. They have been working hard since last year, starting this year, trying to secure a deal that both sides can agree. I would go through some of the deals that they agreed at the end. With COVID-19, they could not meet in person. They have to conduct this dialogue using technology like the Zoom and others meetings, so which make it more difficult for their negotiation. The idea here was that without achieving any mutually agreed deal between the two parties, what's the point? This is why both teams working so hard, which resulted in the holding of Union Peace Conference. And as you know, the last the Union Peace Conference resulted in the signing of the third segment of the Union Accord, and which was also ratified already by the Parliament. And I just want to reiterate here the purpose of this Union Accord. Once they adopt basic principles governing Myanmar model of federal and democratic systems, then this would be the basis to amend all laws, including the 2008 Constitution. So this is a very important aspect of the peace process. Let's go to the next slide, Christian. Thank you. From that, the Union, the Accord, the third segment of Union Accord that they signed, at least we can say that there are three aspects or components involved in the last Union Peace Accord that they signed. First was basically a commitment to the process itself. Because the question is, there will be election in November. There will be a new government. We don't know who's going to, which party is going to be forming a government, which is why they want to ensure that there is a peace process in place, that no matter the outcome of the election, whoever wins, they want to make sure that the peace processes continue unabated. So that was a commitment involved in the Union Accord that they signed. And the second aspect is about what they call framework agreement for the implementation of nationwide ceasefire agreement. If you look at the document of nationwide agreement that they signed in 2015, this is not just a ceasefire document. It's also about how they are going to have this political dialogue and all these steps laid out. But they realize, of course, after the working on this peace process of the last 5 years, there are so many agreements that they could not implement so far. So this second aspect of agreement, what they call framework agreement for the implementation of nationwide ceasefire agreement, is basically reiterating their commitment and also measures that they need to take to implement nationwide ceasefire agreement. And the third aspect is principal agreement. This is the crux of political dialogue. It's basically about federal and democratic principles for Myanmar. So at least there are some principles agreed in the last Union Peace Conference and the third segment of Union Accord that they signed. Within that, some important points to highlight so far in the Union Accord Agreement is, for example, they agreed to set up a constitutional court, independent constitutional court, which would be the main mechanism to resolve any dispute regarding constitutional matters, either between the union government of the federating units or even among the federating units, for example. So this is also important, sort of like a independent judicial, sort of like the agreement that they made, which is important to highlight, and also a creation of secular state. As you know, Burma is a predominantly Buddhist country, and the current Union Constitution, the military constitution also treated Buddhism as sort of like a higher status than others, which means it's like creating Buddhism as a state religion for Myanmar, which meaning discriminating other religious minorities like Christian, Islam, and all that. So I think now they agreed to create a secular state whereby all religions would be treated equally, is an important step in itself. And of course, that agreement is also, this is just a principle to make sure that no one is discriminated based on, their sort of like a sexual orientation or ethnic background and all that. So this is some of the things to highlight in the Union Accord that they agreed. Let's go to the next. And in the Union Act, the third segment of Union Accord that they signed in August this year, they also agreed 8 topics, general topics. Of course, if you look at these, this is very general. At least like in the political dialogue, they want to discuss these 8 topics. First is federalization, or building a federal system. It's all about federal principles. Second is administrative reform. Third, economy and development-related matters. And the fourth is sort of regarding with financial related arrangement, like a fiscal rights or power for member states of the union, all that. And the fifth is land and natural resources. The sixth is the democratization, what kind of democratic principles we should have for Myanmar. And 7, social harmony. I could not see the last one of my own. So can you move? And okay, sorry. Oh, it's
a security sector
thank you.
relation.
Yeah, security sector related issues. Thank you. That's as I said. So the point here is that even within, this is a part of the Dutch Union Accord Agreement. These 8 topics have been agreed that they would be discussing. Within these 8 topics, what they need is a sub-specific topics, say federalization. What kind of principle they would like to negotiate? To give credit to both the sides' negotiating teams, actually, under those 8 general topics, both sides have their respective proposed topics, specific issues that they would like to discuss in future dialogue, but they could not agree yet. Right now, they're in the process of, examining each of the specific topics that both sides bring forward and try to make agreement on a common issues that they would agree. So this is ongoing issue. And here the question is, from now onward, what would be the priorities for Myanmar peace process, and what are they doing? Especially the State Councillor Daw San Suu Kyi, the layout in her opening and the closing speeches that she gave, and also which are also sort of a part of the formal process right now. First, what they are trying to do right now is framework review process. Remember the 7-step roadmap that we talk about. There's a framework for political dialogue, and there's existing mechanism already. They have UPDJC, JICM, all these bodies that they created. So right now, what they are trying to do is to review the existing mechanism for political dialogue and amend whatever amendment necessary. This is the ongoing process that they engage. And the second part is, this is mainly about the government's responsibility to continue negotiating with ethnic arm organizations just like KIO, Kachin Independence Organization, UWSA, especially like members of FPNCC that we talk about. They are trying to bring them on board. So that's ongoing. And the third is consolidating national ceasefire agreement. As we said already, they would like to strengthen like a joint monitoring committees and others to sort of like consolidate the process of implementing ceasefire agreement in place. This is also the focus. And the fourth one, which would be very important that they want to do, which is they are at a stage of brainstorming only, is about implementation body. Implementation body, meaning you might remember, yes, at the end of the peace process, they would adopt Union Accord, which would comprise of basic principles and democratic principles of Myanmar. And at the end, this would be implemented. The question now is, how do they set up or create this implementation body at the union level that would lead and oversee the implementation process of all the agreements that they make? So, would that be, independent body, independent of the current union parliament? How do they work? These are who would be involved. This is a very important question that they would like to tackle, and I am aware that especially ethnic arm organization who signed nationwide ceasefire agreement start working on this. So hopefully, once election is over and the peace process starts, well, I'm sure we will see what this body would look like. Just quickly here, I think I take too much time right now. What are the difficult issues that they face? You might remember that during the last Union Peace Conference, one of the very important demands of ethnic armed organization is to make sure that there is a right for member states of the Union to be able to write their own state constitution within the national within the framework of national constitution. So they thought having a self-determination means being able to write our own constitution without contradicting the Union Constitution. This is very near and dear to them. Yes, Aung San Suu Kyi agreed already. Of course, including the military, they all agreed in terms of the concept of state constitution. They don't argue about the English term of state constitution. What became difficult was that the Dramadol side pushed back, saying that, look, you cannot use the term constitution that we use in Burmese to forge your own state constitution. In Burmese, we call, throughout the history, constitution is interpreted only as but here, the Dhamma was saying you cannot use that. You can use only as a basic law sort of thing. So because of that controversy, unfortunately, this state constitution, even though they agreed in concept and principle, it didn't make it to be a part of the formal agreement. So this is one issue. And the second part I just mentioned about security sector negotiation is still a difficult issue. SSR-DDR debate, and also the notion that there would be a single armed force. But the question is how this single armed force of the Union would be set up, and whether the inherent the problems that ethnic armed organization would like to reform. So this also is a problem, a difficulty, and hopefully these are all a part of the next agendas that they are going to tackle. They treat these as unresolved issues, which would be taken up by the new government as soon as possible. And within that, in terms of security sector, what they both agreed in the last Union Accord is that both the military and the armed groups in particular agreed that they need to create a mechanism by which they discuss, negotiate the security sector related issues, and also come up with a way for implementing it. So this is something in general, when they negotiate, we would see more difficulties that associate with it. And the last is just I mentioned already, so the creation of implementation body. So these are the main part of my presentation. And this is, thank you. So.
Yeah, thank you very much, Saseo. That was a really incredible account of the recent conference, but also the very important topics ahead. What we're going to do now is to start the Q&A section. We're bringing in a commentary from Cassandra Priest. She is a doctoral student in political science from McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, and her current research includes work on elections, ethnic minority rights, and ethnic minority representation in the Asia-Pacific region. So you already can see what her backgrounds could help to inform, to give a different perspective from the ethnic struggle for representation in Myanmar. Cassandra is the co-author with Professor Netina Tan from McMaster University of Electoral Systems, Ethnic Parties, and Party System Stability, which just recently was published at the European Journal of Development Research. As you might know, McMaster University is one of the mentoring institutions working on a research project on women's political participation in Myanmar within this initiative, the Myanmar Initiative, together with the team of researchers from the Enlightened Myanmar Research Foundation, or MREF. Some of you have listened already to Professor Tan when she talked about ethnic and female representation in our series in the spring. NREF will also be coming back this October to talk to us about the subnational parliaments on October 6th and on women's political participation at the village level on October 27th. But I'm disclosing already a little bit too much of our packed agenda for the October webinars. So now we will have the commentary from Cassandra. Thank you so much, Cassandra, for stepping up to this role. Thanks. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Great. Hello, everyone. And thank you so much, Edgar, for inviting me to chat. I've really been asked here to provide another perspective on the peace process, especially looking towards the 2020 election in Myanmar. So I hope my comments can kind of build upon Siseo's discussion of the peace process. He's really provided you with some excellent insights about the process, with particular emphasis on the historical roots of armed conflict in the country, which I think are very important for all of us to understand as we kind of look at the current challenges faced by all members involved in the peace process as we move forward. I'd now like to kind of briefly discuss the impact of the prolonged peace process on voters in Myanmar, especially as we look to the upcoming election. And I'd like to briefly share with you some other actors to consider that might enhance the voice of ethnic minority groups in a more partisan political context. So first, I think it's evident that many ethnic minority communities are disappointed in the progress of the peace process so far, along with increased conflict in Rakhine State and other areas of the country in the last few years. So from an electoral perspective, the NLD made specific campaign promises about the peace process in the 2015 election, which is believed to have won over a significant amount of ethnic minority voters, along with their promises related to economic development, of course. So as we approach the next election, many of these campaign promises have not been fulfilled, leaving voters upset and disillusioned with the NLD government. So what are the alternatives to voting NLD? My research so far has focused on ethnic-based political parties, which are political parties that champion the specific interests of an ethnic group. They've been a key feature of Myanmar politics in the last several elections, and for decades. In 2015, more than 50 ethnic parties participated at both the state and the union elections. So what does this matter for the peace process? There's not necessarily a clear shot between the existence of ethnic parties and the peace process. In fact, there's not really a clear connection between ethnic parties, political parties, and ethnic armed organizations in most cases. But if ethnic parties succeed at election time, the belief is that the voices and demands of minority ethnic groups can be enhanced through political representation as well. And so representatives of minority groups can have a seat at the table, at least in parliament. And since many of these parties share common political demands, mainly related to the peace process and federalism, they align with some of the demands of ethnic armed organizations that are part of the peace process and the agreements made so far. And so the idea here is that ethnic parties and minority candidates that secure seats at election time can provide complementary voices in a different context for ethnic minority groups and underrepresented groups in Parliament. So the recent paper I co-authored with Professor Natina Tan explains some conditions under which ethnic parties can succeed in Myanmar, and I'm happy to share that with anyone who is interested. Please let me know in the chat. We find that ethnic parties must be strategic in several ways if they want to succeed at election time, especially the upcoming 2020 election. And we've seen some promising evidence that ethnic parties are learning from their experience in previous elections. So since 2015, actually, we've seen quite a few ethnic parties that have merged with parties of the same ethnic group in order to boost their electoral chances and share resources. For example, 3 Karen parties merged in 2018 to form the Karen National Democratic Party, which will be competing as a unit for seats in 2020. So there's some movement and some exciting things happening for the ethnic parties going forward right now as we face the upcoming election. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, my co-author and I were mildly optimistic that the increase in mergers and alliances among these ethnic parties could lead to an increase of ethnic minority candidates securing seats in parliament, especially since many ethnic minority voters, as I mentioned, are disappointed in the NLD's record related to the peace process and other issues related to ethnic minority interests. However, the pandemic has hindered ethnic parties from effectively preparing and campaigning. It's presented challenges across the board, of course, for everyone. So it will be an interesting and a challenging election for many. I will personally be paying close attention to how some of the recently merged ethnic parties campaign and perform at the polls. A few to watch are the Karen National Democratic Party, as I mentioned, along with the Kachin State People's Party. So just to conclude, the COVID-19 has certainly made the upcoming election a more challenging one for everyone, and ethnic minority parties already face an uphill battle. So we'll have to wait and see how they perform and really how voters have been impacted by the peace process over the last few years and decades, of course, but really the most recent developments, how that might play in voters' minds as they make their decisions at the polls. So it's clear to me that the prolonged process has had an impact on ethnic voters. I think we can be sure that the peace process itself will be top of mind for many voters across the country as they head to the polls this year. And I think, in addition, the electoral results will certainly have implications on the peace process itself as it moves forward. So I'll leave it there and happy to address any questions. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. Those are very insightful commentary that really complements the view that Saseo has shared with us. And it has emphasized the need to magnify the voices of the ethnic groups that definitely in Myanmar are trying to figure out a way to peace. We are looking at the chat